So we just got to experience day one of the 2024 NBA playoffs, and I'm not even going to waste your time trying to think of a clever intro to try to lead into this because we got a lot of games to talk about in a very limited time frame. So I will start with the most anticipated, or at least my most anticipated game of the day, which was Lakers and Nuggets. And it appeared basically from the opening tip that the Lakers were basically just putting all of their energy into making a statement to start the game. They had a 10-point lead about midway through the second quarter, and then Denver just started doing Denver things. They went on a very quick 8-0 run in the second quarter to trim the lead back down to around 3 points, and pretty much ever since then the Lakers were just outmatched. And this is actually a really interesting matchup that I was kind of waiting for, because although the Lakers don't have Jared Vanderbilt, the Nuggets are without Bruce Brown this time, and LeBron James is now 100%, I'm assuming, as in comparison to last year when you could make the case that he wasn't 100% or he was clearly dealing with something. But it didn't really seem to make a difference, and I kind of figured that something like this would happen. Basically, just given the fact that they don't have Vando, you're going to have to be dealing with that, especially with the complex actions that the Nuggets are going to run with Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., although I assume that Rui is probably going to take that matchup, and, you know, he's going to have some minutes on Aaron Gordon as well. But when we look over to who is likely going to be a 3-time MVP very soon, Nikola Jokic was absolutely incredible again. 32 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 steals. He dunked the ball 3 times this game, which is very uncharacteristic. 15 for 23 from the field. There wasn't really a point where he looked like he was out of his comfort zone or anything along those lines. I mentioned that the Lakers had a 10-point lead. It definitely felt like they were leading, but in the back of your mind, you knew that, like, Denver, they got this. Like, this still feels like their game to lose. And that to me is pretty scary to think about when you consider the fact that this Lakers team is probably one of the toughest possible matchups that they're gonna get in this year's playoffs. Maybe the Lakers and Minnesota are gonna be the 2 toughest teams that they would face. And it doesn't seem like the Lakers still have any answers for them. Although the games are still close, the Nuggets have been just that little bit better, especially when it matters most. LeBron, while he is putting up his usual LeBron numbers, 27 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, the fatigue and the age is definitely starting to show. We're gonna see him put up numbers until literally the day he retires, no matter when that is. It seems like it's gonna be at like age 52 or something now. But in terms of things like, you know, fighting for rebounds or losing defenders off ball occasionally, you've definitely been noticing things like that a lot more with him, given that he still has a lot of offensive responsibility, even at age 39. Other than that, the point guard duel that we were probably expecting did not live up to what we thought it would. Jamal Murray, 9 for 24. A lot of those were pretty quality looks. He did miss some tough shots where it's just like, all right, calm down. But if we look over to the other side of the stat sheet, D'Angelo Russell shot 6 for 20, 1 for 9 from 3. A lot of these shots were wide open, and I expected that the KCP matchup would be a little bit difficult for him, but it just seemed like he was missing shots in game 1. Although a lot of those shots did seem a little bit quick, mainly due to the defense of not necessarily KCP, but really just great team defense from the Nuggets team as a whole. But all that in mind, I do expect the Lakers to have a little bit of a better game in game 2, although I still have the Nuggets winning the series in 5 games. So we will see. On to the first game of the day. I've decided I would just get this game out the way as quickly as possible. The Magic and the Cleveland Cavaliers, which went pretty much exactly how you would expect. 97-83 final score, and that is mainly due to the Magic having pretty much no offense. And this is something that we knew coming in. They were one of the worst offensive teams in the NBA this season, and so we knew that it was probably going to be pretty unpleasant hoops from just that fact alone. But the Cleveland Cavaliers did come out hitting a bunch of threes to start the game, but over time the Orlando Magic defense started showing up again, and they were eventually able to force Cleveland into missing, I believe it was 15 consecutive three-pointers. But that's where their offense came in again, because even though they were able to force that many misses, they were unable to make any sort of meaningful run outside of the one they put together in the fourth quarter, and then they just completely let go of the rope and Cleveland started to run away. away again. I mean, there really isn't that much to this game and this series, quite frankly. Although I will say that if you are one of those fans who, I guess, traditional fans, for lack of a better word, you hate 140-point final scores, this is definitely going to be the series for you, because I have a feeling that a lot of the like hardcore, like extreme hardcore basketball fans are going to really enjoy watching dudes like Jonathan Isaac, Jalen Suggs, Jared Allen, and Evan Mobley play defense. Just literally play defense in this series. So I feel like that is going to be the main takeaway. It's just the defense from both teams, especially the Magic. But the Cleveland Cavaliers should win this series. They definitely shouldn't have that many issues putting this team away, just because of how bad they are offensively. With that, we move on to another game and another series that I think is going to go pretty quickly. The Minnesota Timberwolves and the Phoenix Suns. Long story short, the Suns are just going to be outmatched in this series, and we kind of knew that coming in. The Phoenix Suns, even though they built this crazy team with Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, they don't really have that much depth outside of that. And even then, you don't really even know what the identity of this Phoenix team even is. If Devin Booker is asked to be your main facilitator, then I'm not entirely sure what you expect out of this team. Even though he is doing it, and that's something that I'd said about this team last season, I'm not sure that that is necessarily the route that you want to go. In terms of Devin Booker scoring this game, he was completely in a box. Jaden McDaniels was just putting on a defensive clinic against Devin Booker. A lot of people assumed that he would be taking the Kevin Durant matchup, but the Minnesota Timberwolves strategy or game plan just seems to be letting KD do whatever he wants and making sure that Devin Booker doesn't go off, because if he goes off, then you're gonna have a tougher time. Although it was a pretty rough night for a bunch of other players. Eric Gordon was 0 for 5, Grayson Allen 0 for 3, Bradley Beal 15 points, although he was 6 for 10, but he didn't really get that many shots, or as many shots as he would have hoped, especially given the circumstances and the matchups that were happening. Drew Eubanks pretty much a non-factor in this game. Yusuf Nurkic kind of a non-factor, especially on defense, which is pretty funny. He was so focused on Golden State and Draymond Green being eliminated from playoff contention that I assume that he forgot to do film study and forgot that they actually had a series to play, I'm assuming. But I digress. And back to the Minnesota defense. Over the last few seasons, Rudy Gobert has been getting clowned for not being able to switch out onto guards, which has pretty much always been a false narrative, like, oh, the fakest defensive player of the year ever, you know, things like that. And these were things that I kind of believed for a while, but now seeing Rudy Gobert with an actual competent defensive team around him, this is absolutely ridiculous. In the second quarter, Minnesota went to a zone defense and they absolutely crumbled. They completely fell apart. Turnover after turnover, just unable to get quality shots off. And I'm not sure that this is something that's going to change. And so that should definitely be something to keep in mind and something to look forward to as the series goes on. And before we get out of here, quick shout out to Anthony Edwards for being one of the funnest players in the NBA to watch right now. He had a spectacular game, 33 points, most of those coming in the second half. He was hitting tough shots in the paint over KD. He really started to get going towards the end of the third quarter. He was talking crazy to Kevin Durant. And I mean, this is what it's all about. It's the playoffs. And so it was really fun watching that too. Minnesota should not have any real problems putting away this team. And now to the second to last game of the day, which is going to be weirdly the last game that we talk about in this video, the Sixers and Knicks. And this was an interesting one because I felt like New York was going to win this game, but it wasn't for the reasons that they actually won. I thought that the New York Knicks were going to go into a zone right away, because if we know anything about the Sixers team, it's that when they face a zone defense, their brains just completely shut down. They have no idea what to do. We saw this in the play-in game against the Miami Heat, especially in the first half, where they actually looked like it was the first time that they had ever seen a zone defense before. Of course, they were still able to go on and win the game, but I thought that New York would start with that right away, and they didn't. They allowed Joel Embiid to just cook one-on-one, which is a pretty interesting decision considering that they don't really have any one-on-one defenders for Joel Embiid. I mean, at this point, I don't think anybody really does. And so it was a pretty interesting strategy, and he really got going in the first half. He had 15 in the first quarter and 18 in the first half as a whole. He did leave the game after this play, an injury that was fairly scary at the time. And from this point on, he pretty much just didn't look the same. He came back in the second half, and I want to point out that Underdog had tweeted that Paul Reed was going to start the second half in Joel Embiid's place. And then about 5 minutes later, actual real life time, Joel Embiid is just on the court starting the second half. So I'm not sure when that decision actually happened, or if Joel Embiid just came to the bench and said, no, I'm good to go, and just immediately got into the game. Either way, I don't think he should have played the second half. He was barely moving when he first got into the game. He wasn't even really jumping for rebounds. He wasn't jumping on shot contests in the paint, and he wasn't really even moving that much on defense. Despite that, the Knicks still didn't really take advantage of the fact that he was clearly hobbled. They didn't really abuse him on defense that much. They didn't try to get him into actions. There were plays where Josh Hart had Joel Embiid under the rim and he just passed out as if he was looking at Wemby or something. It just seemed like they didn't really know the situation. And in the third quarter, there came a point where they literally couldn't stop Tyrese Maxey, or I want to say just the entire second half. Tyrese Maxey had 21 points in the second half. He was blowing by everybody. He was basically just getting whatever he wanted. 9 for 12 from the field, and they really didn't have any answers for him. So they don't have any answers for Embiid or Tyrese Maxey, and they still won this game because the Philadelphia 76ers took their chances on Josh Hart and OG Anunoby hitting threes in the fourth quarter, and they did. Josh Hart and OG Anunoby hit 4 of the Knicks' 6 3-pointers in the fourth quarter, and 3 of those were hit by Josh Hart, who, keep in mind, was 31% from 3 in the regular season, and some of these shots were just shots that he doesn't usually make. Step back threes off the dribble. There was one 3 that he made with about a minute left in the fourth quarter where he literally just threw up a shot and made it. And I don't really want to say luck, but it feels like the Knicks were lucky to win this game. Given just the awful shooting night from Jalen Brunson, he was 8 for 26. The Joel Embiid injury and him basically having no lift in his shot after that. Them not being able to attack Joel Embiid even though he was clearly injured. And being saved by Josh Hart fourth quarter threes. To be honest, this entire series basically depends on how Joel Embiid feels the entire rest of the way. Because, I mean, the injury that he suffered, like, it was a non-contact knee injury that he got while landing after a dunk. I'm not completely confident in whatever that means for him for the rest of the series, even though he did come back and play the second half. But again, he didn't look the same afterwards. So I think the series is going to largely depend on that, because even when he was playing in the second half and when he wasn't really moving all that well, the Sixers were still a positive in the minutes that Joel Embiid played compared to the minutes that he sat. And so when you look at it like that, it's definitely gonna be interesting moving forward. Best of luck to him, because this injury luck that he has is just ridiculous at this point. But with all that being said, this playoffs, I am going crazy. I'm probably going to be uploading maybe every other day. I'm going to try to upload as many days as possible. Every other day is my goal right now, as well as just doing the watch parties and stuff like that. Speaking of which, if you're watching this the day that it comes out, we are doing a watch party on Gold-Blooded for the Clippers and Mavericks game 1 and the Bucks Pacers game 1. So if that is something that you're interested in, you can tap in, download the Playback app on whatever platform you're using it on, or use the link to go to the Playback website on your desktop. But with all that being said, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new, hit the bell to be notified when I upload, comment down below what you want to see next, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.